Hi everyone, welcome to the Subby Podcast. I am pleased to be joined this morning by Kris Martin. He's a good friend of mine. We met via the Hub in the Pub Nights, which is a CIOB networking event. And Kris is currently working for EP01 on a project, I think, in the London area as a project manager. So welcome, Kris. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, James. How are you? You okay, friend?
Yeah, it's been an interesting time, to say the least. Everyone's different. I think we're going to do this run of podcasts, and why I wanted to get you on, Kris, just to hear as many versions, stories, experiences, especially with now how we're moving back to going to work and how how we're dealing with that. So let's kick it off. I mean, personally, how's the whole COVID-19 been for you?
Well, if we're talking personally, firstly, just great initiative for you to sort of like to put these things together because I think it's important to share different experiences. Personally, it's actually been really nice, to be honest. So to give you a quick rundown, I'm actually working over at Q-Bridge for EcoWorld on one of their flagship jobs. We kind of shut the job down around about the 27th of March. The teams then moved to working from home, which in itself, obviously, in project management, so I'm not a client project manager, I'm a physical self-build project manager. So the first period was quite hard to adapt. But if we talk personally, it's been fantastic. Obviously, I've got time with my family. All of the commuting was sort of like non-existent. Stress levels, although the pressure was still there, stress levels were less because I was in my home environment. So personally, I found it really good, albeit a terrible situation. Professionally, however, yeah, like I said, very challenging. The first sort of period, trying to adapt methods, project management on site, being that physical presence. It was very challenging to adapt that. So we've moved over to Microsoft Teams. But one thing I guess that it really has done is kind of like you have to hone your skills. So now the delegation factor, you've really got to be specific. When you're not there and you're doing things over Teams, it's quite challenging. So yeah, personally really good, professionally very challenging. So yeah.
I totally agree with you. I mean, there can't be one person who's actually missed the M25 or the bustling tube every morning. That's a given. The communication thing's been one big thing that stood out for me. You know, there's something that you don't realise. I think being face to face with someone, it's so much easier to communicate. Whether you're talking about something, site wise or from a consultancy point of view, either way, it's that face to face makes such a difference. And I mean, I've been using Zoom a lot, but like you said, I think a lot of people have moved to Microsoft Teams. I mean, you mentioned that, so it's been a difficult task trying to get that point across, through Teams.
Yeah, and getting people to, again, I always like to look for silver linings. I always like to look for the positives because there's a lot of negative always out there. So one thing, it's really everyone's kind of, all my team anyway, they now thoroughly appreciate and understand all the scopes, all the contracts. They appreciate every task, every program detail. So that's the other thing we've been able to. It's almost like a break in time, and we've looked at the program, analysed it, saw where it needed tweaking. But instead of that being a programmer sat there, it's been the whole team. Everyone's had time to have their input. You quite often you get on a job and it's a million miles an hour straight from the word go. So it's been really good to take that breath, understand, and I'm hoping. So we started back, or we're in the process of starting back. When I get my full team back, because I'm phasing it back in, that I'm going to have a really well oiled machine, I hope. So I'm hoping that a lot of the delays that we've incurred will be able to pick up. Now, obviously. Go on, sorry.
No, I was just going to say it's something that I've said for years. How great would it be to just have a 2-month period where we all say, stop. Let's look at the supply chain. Let's look at the contracts. Let's look at the programs. Let's let everyone essentially catch up. We're in an industry that is boom, 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 boom. And I think this time, I mean, I know personally, it's time for perspective and actually understanding where we're going wrong and how we can do it better. And I think that was going to be my next question. You know, how much, as you're now progressing back slowly, the time you've had to look at everything, like you say, communicate with the team and about the program, the contracts, there's got to be positives to come out of this for us as an industry.
100%, yeah. There has to be the positives that come out of this. I mean, if we just quickly talk about the industry as a whole, where it was and how we were pushing forward, you talk about supply chains. This is actually, everyone's had to take stock of how we look at things. It's Mental Health Awareness Week, so I mean, like you don't realise until you stop how much pressure you put yourself under, and I think that stop and that breath, if you like, people are going to have to look at different ways of how they're carrying out things. I mean, we're going back in a slow fashion, so whereas before we're trying to get as many activities done, now when we go back, we'll be like one subcontractor per floor or one area, one-way systems, regimented breaks. Quite often you find yourself, you don't even take a break, or you work through all these kind of pressures. I think that this stop, people are going to have to now, in order to maintain the social distancing, in order to like control what we've been going through, everyone is going to have to do it at a slower pace.
Yeah.
And because we're going to phase everything back in, I feel there'll be more control in the industry. I feel that it won't be so wham bam and hectic and everyone's stressed out to the max. There's still going to be a bedding in period. Although we're now talking about the industry coming back alive and stuff, it's going to be very slow and very controlled, and it can only be good. It can only be good for everybody. Like we were just burning everything out. So the big positive has got to be how we change how we do things.
Yeah,
you're going to now look at how practical it is for certain people to work at home. So when perhaps you've got these things, you've got, I don't know, you've got your child's like something happening at school or whatever, and you're rushing home from work, and perhaps now you can have that one day a week at home. You can look at those types of things. So I think there's only going to be positive change that comes out of this.
Yeah, I hope so. I think you're right. I think there's the breath to come up for a breath of fresh air, and really look at that day-to-day process. I think it's going to make, I definitely, for one, it's going to make everyone a lot safer and a lot more aware of everyone in that supply chain. Like you say, from the young parents who've got a child's evening, a parents' evening at school, and it's not the end of the world. They can work from home. It can be done. I know we've got this focus of essentially where we are and what we're delivering is on a site somewhere, but we all have to be there. We can work around it. We can make it work. I think one, it's it's a tough question to ask, but I'm going to ask it, and because it's something that bothers me. We're very margins and everything's very tight, and my only concern is that we do this for a 1 to 2 months, 3 months, and then all of a sudden programs get pushed, everything, clients are getting on the back of people, and all of a sudden this starts to go out the window, and we're in a very, very dangerous position. I'm only asking to just see, what are your thoughts on that? This is something that has to stay implemented until obviously a vaccine or, that kind of thing happens. This is something we have to stick to as an industry.
I think that's where the kind of the sticking point is, because you touched on it, but obviously it's investors, it's people are doing this to make money. And unfortunately, there's a lot of greed in the world. There's a lot of that kind of thing. So, and everyone's different. Everyone looks at things differently. Like, I've been very lucky. We've got fantastic support. So we're backed by Malaysia, and their approach has been absolutely fantastic. So they haven't furloughed anyone. There's no pressure. People that are coming back, there's an assessment, like a one-on-one assessment. Do they feel comfortable? Are they happy? That kind of thing. But unfortunately, like with anything, James, there's different types of people in the industry, and there's I fear that you're correct, that there's a lot of people, it will go back. Once we're back in the swing of things, they're going to be pushing programs.
Yeah.
And you're right, there is going to be certain factors that that people can't get away from, and people are going to want to try and win back time on programs.
Yeah, of course.
But I guess that there's not enough. Maybe there'll be some more support. Maybe there'll be people that say, actually, you know what, we should maintain with this. But unfortunately, you and I both know that everyone's different, and unfortunately, there are going to be sections of the industry that are chomping to get back to how it was.
Yeah, for sure. I think one thing interesting that you just touched on was about the personal kind of preference to this, and this is not, if you take an office environment, this is not you've had a cold for a couple of weeks and that general kind of, well, should you come back because I don't want the rest of the office getting it. This is something that is a lot more serious and a real personal preference. And I think we have to stay aware of that. And like you say, if that starts to get back to normal and then they start pushing the programs, there's a lot of personal preferences out there. You know, people are dependent on their kids. People are dependent on looking after their parents. They can't, you know, and there's a lot to come with it. So it's going to be an interesting couple of months to see how we move forward as an industry. But I think collaboration and coming together as one is so important now. It's so important, and really taking everyone's opinion into context. And that's why we want to do this. We want to see how everyone is feeling about moving back to normal.
Yeah. I'm very lucky. I moved away from the previous outfit I was working with, and I'm working with a fantastic company now at Ego World, and their philosophy has been great. I mean, if we take people's personal situations, we're now doing, like I said, we do a one-on-one assessment, and even if they've got no reasons not to come back, and it's simply that they don't feel comfortable, then that's fine. That they can still fulfill a role. Perhaps their role will change slightly, but I think it's fantastic that we're offering those one-on-ones just to actually really see how people feel, because a lot of people don't want to talk about. They may feel shamed if they're worried about something, or so we're actively trying to encourage that out of people to ensure that when they do come back, they're comfortable. They're at the pace they want it to be, kind of thing. So, like I said, I'm very lucky, but unfortunately, there are going to be other companies where it'll be, right, we're open, you're coming back. And so there is going to be a very varied approach to coming back to work.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks for talking about that. Just before we wrap it up, let's tell us a bit more about your journey with the CIOB and, of course, Hub in the Pub.
Okay, cool. So I first kind of tried to get involved with the CIOB in 2011. And at the time, I was a subcontractor, actually. I had my own business. And as you can appreciate, it was very demanding, I'd say, at the time. You know yourself, with your own business, trying to keep up with everything. So it kind of fell to the wayside. I then joined a company in 2015, and they were very supportive of professional bodies. So I retook it back up. So sort of like 3-4 months into joining that company, I'd got my chartership. So I was MCIOB. I was really over the moon because I'd started the journey in 2011. And then basically, I think it was 2016, it went from the CIOB kind of changed its structure slightly. So they brought about the hubs. So that's different hubs around the country that fed into the main body, that ran the local CPDs, that ran the local events and stuff. So I applied to join the committee, and thankfully I was successful. So I've been on the committee now since 2016. But one of the initiatives is is engagement. We struggle with engagement. So we used to have a pint once a month, the committee members, and we thought, why don't we try and sort of like open this up to the wider people, really, make it a bit more informal, make it easier to get involved with the CIOB. So we launched the Hub in the Pub. So fast forward a little while, and just before obviously the shutdown and this terrible pandemic, we had some real traction. So we were meeting once a month down on the Strand. And it really started to gather pace. I mean, I met yourself. I've met a lot of fantastic people. just putting people in touch and then helping them start their journey with the CIOB. And we've actually got one on Wednesday. So if anyone listening is interested, I'll be putting the details up on LinkedIn. So we've gone to a virtual hub in the pub now. So we're going to be holding a Skype one this Wednesday. I'll put all the details on LinkedIn. It's a fantastic thing. Come and meet some people, find out a little bit more about the CIOB, and generally just widen that community, really.
Yeah, I agree. The one thing I love about the hub in the pub is it's diverse across profession.
Yeah.
It covers everyone. I spent I was starting Subby, trying to go to as many networking events as possible, and so many are just architects, just project managers, and this is, the hub in a pub. I've met subcontractors, architects, project managers. I've met yourself, and loads of people from different backgrounds. And it's a real great event, nice and relaxed, as you say.
Exactly, that's the main thing. It's just relaxed in an informal way, because some networking things can be too formal. And this is just literally, it's up until obviously the shutdown, it was just fantastic. Everyone's become friends, to be honest. So it's really good. Yeah.
Great. Well, listen, Kris, absolute pleasure having you on, and best of luck moving forward and getting back to site. And I'll see you on the Hub in the Pub Skype call.
Thank you very much. Great to speak to you.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.